ओके, गुड इवनिंग। आज वाला ये जो टॉपिक है PSUs का, दिस वन जज सेड कि लास्ट टाइम ये आया तो था पर ये मुझे मिला नहीं, and finally I get it. एका अर्थानी it's an absolutely interesting topic in the sense that PSUs का अपना एक legacy है, अपना एक history है, अपना एक वजूद है, significance है, और दूसरी एक तरफ से वो एक काफी प्रॉब्लमेटिक टॉपिक इसलिए है क्योंकि देयर इज अ परसेप्टेबल चेंज इन गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी कि PSUs का पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स एंटरप्राइजेस डेवलपमेंट बैंक देयर आर मल्टिपल नेम्स व्हिच आर यूज्ड फॉर की याचा एक्झॅक्टली करायचं काय आणि आताच्या घडीला इन द 21st सेंचुरी हाऊ डू दे फिट अप विथ द लार्जर प्लॅन ऑफ द इकॉनॉमी म्हणजे कुठेतरी देयर इज अ मिसमॅच in the sense that possibly these units have outlived their utility. उनका एक ज़माना था, उस वक्त उसका एक importance था, आज की तारीख में वो importance खत्म हो चुका है। और they are bywords for redundancy, they are bywords for a situation where there is overemployment, they are bywords for inefficiency, corruption, they are bywords for everything that has gone wrong. There is an idea which says कि काही करून त्यांना डिसमॅन्टल करणं, त्यांना जमलं तर प्रायव्हेटाइज करणं. दॅट इज वेअर द आयडिया ऑफ सेलिंग द फॅमिली सिल्वर कंट्री. व्हॉट आर यू डूइंग व्हेन यू आर सेइंग की सेलिंग द फॅमिली सिल्वर, व्हॉट इट मीन्स इज यू आर प्रायव्हेटाइजिंग. काही केसेस मध्ये जिथं दे आर प्रॉफिटेबल, ट्राय फ्लोटिंग देम एज व्हॉट आर एज पब्लिक सेक्टर कंपनीज व्हिच वुड बी लिस्टेड ऑन द स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस. याच्या पुढे द गव्हर्नमेंट विल नॉट पुट मनी इनटू. The money for it will come from something that is called as the stock exchanges. And thereby, the very fact that the money is coming from the stock exchanges necessitates कि company का structure, company का management, company का purpose has to undergo a change. Like listed company के लिए, so it will not be a traditional public sector company. It will be a completely different firm altogether. कि कुछ ना कुछ तरी ठीक है, मतलब government in most of the cases doesn't want to lose its control over the firm. आणि में एक अजब किस्म का सिचुएशन है जिसमें एक तरफ ये आइडिया है कि ये फर्म काम नहीं करता, इसको एक तरह से खत्म करना जरूरी है, पर दूसरी तरफ एक प्रॉब्लम ये भी है कि फर्म का अपना एक एसेट है, फर्म का अपना एक वैल्यू है, फर्म का अपना एक फिजिकल प्रेजेंस है, एंड दैट एक्सूड्स पावर इवन इफ इट इज अ फर्म व्हिच इज पॉसिबली नॉट मेकिंग प्रॉफिट. में पॉसिबली इट्स नॉट मेकिंग एनी प्रॉफिट एज सच, पण तरी पण तिचं एक फिजिकल अस्तित्व आहे. आणि if I am a minister of some department की ज्याच्या कंट्रोलमध्ये अशा फर्म्स आहेत, I am not exactly happy with the situation where I lose control over it. मैं know कि it is not working, I know कि overall policy direction ऐसा है कि आपको भाई इसको खत्म करना है, पर फिर भी मेरा एक प्रॉब्लम ये है कि it is something which has power. I don't want to let go of that power. So the power to influence the decisions as far as that firm is concerned, the power to get what about small benefits and favors. काय चार कार्यकर्त्यांना लावून घेतलं, दोन काही फोन कॉल्स फुकट केले, या असलेले बेनिफिट्स असतात. आय डोंट वांट टू फॉरगो देट. सो लार्ज पॉलिसी डायरेक्शन एका बाजूला आहे, आमचा ऍक्च्युअली चाललेला प्रॅक्टिस एका तिसऱ्याच लेवलला आहे, आणि ही जी अशा प्रकारची दुविधा आहे की याच्यामध्ये संपवायचं तर आहे पण संपत नाही. And how should one deal with that? That is the larger conundrum that we are working on. आता we know for sure कि if the frontline decides to do something on the public sector, what exactly is the frontline going to talk about? The frontline एकंदरीत काय भूमिकेने याच्याबद्दल बोलणार, frontline याच्याबद्दल काय पद्धतीने याच्याकडे बघणार, हे एकंदरीत सगळ्यांनाच माहिती आहे, त्याच्याबद्दल नवीन काही नाही. पण even if I say for example leave the frontline aside for some time and take a look at the business newspapers in India, the situation is not much different, is what one realizes. And one of the reasons for it now in 2016 to be really worried about it, कि एका बाजूला the state is actively pursuing policies ज्याच्यामध्ये public sector enterprises मधला government का जो ownership control है वो dilute किया जाए. Public sector companies should at some point of time or the other be pushed into a privatization mode. The only problem is, India's private companies are crass. They are nothing less than crap. They are hopeless. The best working private companies are companies ज्यांचा active premise of making money is cheating the government, is cheating the public sector, is cheating public resources. In a genuinely free market economy, वो है ना डॉलर की कीमत कभी नहीं है. Nobody would pay him even $1 for the amount of fat that he has. It's only in a country like India in which बापापासून कार्टांपर्यंत सगळ्यांनी public resources आणि public funds ह्याच्यावरती मार डल्ला मारलेला आहे, which is the basis of whatever they have achieved in their life. They are a hopeless company, and the state is actively pursuing policies. But one wouldn't have a problem with the state had the state pursued policies to create 20 Reliances. The state's policies are to make one Reliance 20 times richer. That is the only problem that one has with the state. में इतना pointless, hopeless state है कि one could have understood कि okay ठीक है चलो for a game let's have 20 Reliances. Let them bid for different types of resources and let them prove कि how exactly does a competitive market work. पर ये वो भी नहीं हो रहा है. वो एक ही चीज रहा है. Our government keeps on fattening this bull 20 times over. अब वो बेशर्मी की हद है. You don't get anything out of this. And hence one needs to be worried about this कि like ठीक है one can understand तुम्हारा public control ownership dilute करायचं है, you want new talent in this, you want new managerial practices to be brought in, you want new technologies to be absorbed in, new markets to be opened up, everything is fine. And one understands कि in आज का business माहौल में public sector companies का जो एक बहुत strong reason था post 47 creation जब किया गया इनमें से बहुत सारे companies का त्याला CSR नावाची गोष्ट नव्हती. त्याला public sector firmचं पूर्ण अस्तित्व CSR होतं. So there wasn't some corporate responsibility called as the CSR. The company did not have one box to tick which was called as CSR. The entire firm was established for something called as CSR. And one of the most important CSRs which it was supposed to undertake is something called as public employment. So generating vast amount of employment was one of the primary purposes for which they were established. आता when you look at the पूरा business का माहौल, one does understand this that purpose has to be whittled down, and there is no problem with it as such. मैं त्याला तुम्ही दूसरा काहीच करू शकत नाही. मैं since the 20th century started, Indian Railways lost 1.5 lakh people on account of redundancy, on account of retirement and all of that. 1.5 lakh लोक retire झाली, 1.5 lakh लोकांनी job सोडले. Indian Railways in these 15 years created only 30,000 jobs. म्हणजे ज्या period मध्ये 1.5 lakh लोक have stepped down from their positions, either BRS किया या उसका कोई retirement हुआ, कुछ ना कुछ तो वजह हुआ. पर आपने नया employment कितना generate किया? 30,000 generate किया, which is like a fraction of what you have lost. And there are reasons, there are ample reasons for it. कि no longer can this be seen in the same old light. Though the public feels that they are entitled to have jobs. I mean, if you remember what I said about the Bihar election, when I said this, that one of the reasons why it was lost was precisely because after having had committed yourself, you could not create public employment. And nobody is interested in this कि मी असे facilitating atmosphere आणील की ज्याच्यामुळे अनिल अंबानी आणि मुकेश अंबानी येतील नोकऱ्या तुम्हाला देतील असं नकोय. What we are looking out for is full-time employment. What we are looking out for is full-time public employment. We are not looking out for anything less than that. And that capacity as far as the public sector is concerned is completely gone. And the reason for it is the larger business environment in which you are now operating. You cannot imagine firms which can go about creating jobs in multiples of hundreds in the way in which they created it once upon a time. I mean, way back, and this is just for comparison purposes. इसका ज़्यादा कोई मतलब नहीं. Way back in the 1990s, when हमारा economic policies went in for the liberalization वाला move, the United States had 3 companies which were right at the top in terms of being the top 3 companies as far as Americans are concerned. 2 of them were car manufacturers, General Motors and Ford Motors. That's a total market capitalization जो था वो approximately $300 billion के आसपास का था. Okay. total revenues which they are generating are in the range of 290 billion or thereof. But between the three of them, they used to employ 1.5 lakh people. Sorry, I'm very sorry, 1.5 million people, which was like huge. 1.5 million is 15 lakh log. The top three companies now in the United States in 2016, when I'm talking to you, are people who have a market capitalization which goes into $1.2 trillion. They are much more valuable as compared to the companies of the 1990s. पर इनका full time employment का scale जो है ना वो 1.5 lakh है. So to generate a value of 1.2 trillion, which is huge by itself, they no longer need armies of people working for them. What is enough for them? That is the level of change which we have undergone on account of a certain sort of technological improvement which has happened over the last 20 years. कि त्या technological improvement मध्ये तुम्ही आता विचारही करू शकत नाही of companies which are going to go about recruiting armies of people. It's impossible. For no purpose. At the most, companies like Indian Railways can keep on recruiting people in what are called as contractual positions. पण त्या capacities देखील खूप मर्यादित आहेत. सो आपण अशा प्रकारच्या बिझनेस एन्व्हायरमेंट्स मध्ये बोलतोय की ज्याच्यामध्ये फर्म्सच्या एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट करण्याच्या पॉसिबिलिटीज ज्या आहेत या दिवसेंदिवस मर्यादित होत चाललेल्या आहेत. आणि हे जे टेक्नॉलॉजिकल इम्प्रूव्हमेंट आहे किंवा डिस्ट्रप्शन आहे हे अशाच पद्धतीने वाढत राहणार आहे की ज्याच्यामध्ये फर्म प्रेस्टिजियस बनत जाते, फर्मचं मार्केट कॅपिटलायझेशन वाढत जातं, फर्म जास्तीत जास्त श्रीमंत बनत जाते, ती प्रॉफिट्स देखील बनवते. तर एकच प्रॉब्लेम असा असतो की ती नोकऱ्या नाही देऊ शकत. And no longer do we need large armies of people to work for us. For even more money, we can employ smaller numbers of people. At that case, we need to think of this: कि how does it work in a country like India, and what exactly should be done about this in a country like India? Okay, and let me go through a couple of statistics for all of this before we put it on the table in terms of इसका exactly problem क्या है और ये दिख रहा है तो किस तरह से दिख रहा है. Most public enterprises in India are run by something that is called as the Department of Public Enterprises, which is a department of the Ministry of Heavy Industry. So, Ministry of Heavy Industry, that is what takes care of all of these. As of now, we have something like 290 odd companies which are listed out as central public sector enterprises. States we are not talking of them as of now. We are mostly focusing on what are called as the CPSUs. So central public sector enterprises they are roughly 290 के आसपास हैं. Okay, 7 of them are what are called as Maharatnas. Some 17 of them are classified as Navaratnas, and then there is a large group of them that are classified as Mini Ratnas. So, do I have the details for that? Okay, I might have. Let me check them out. 300 CPSEs. 7 are Maharatnas, 17 Navaratnas, and 73 are Mini Ratnas. This categorization has started from 1997, when the first Navaratna companies were established. Established in the sense that the first companies were accorded the Navaratna status. So, and the idea was that these companies profitable and they should be reasonably led to float themselves on the market to go about raising monies which are required to run the firm. किंवा increasingly त्याचे ते क्रायटेरिया असतात की तुम्ही 3 वर्ष किती प्रॉफिट बनवला पाहिजे, 5 वर्ष किती प्रॉफिट बनवला पाहिजे, आणि आता त्याच्यानंतर देखील ते अत्यंत दरिद्री आहे इन द सेन्स की तुम्ही किती पैसे जाऊन मार्केटवरती रेज करू शकता. सो आयदर 15% ऑफ युअर ॲसेट्स और 1000 to 5000 करोड और 25000 करोड असे त्याच्यात सगळ्या ब्रॅकेट्स आहेत की ज्याच्यामध्ये टॉप. सो यू हॅव 300 CPSEs of which 7 are Maharatnas, 17 are Navaratnas, and 73 are what are classified as Mini Ratnas. B. This department, that's the Department of Public Enterprises, is supposed to lay before Parliament a report on the functioning of these firms practically every year. Okay, कारण ह्या companies ज्या आहेत त्याच्यामध्ये there is something called as public money which is involved, and if it involves public money, then Parliament has to be given an account of it. So every year they are supposed to go about making a report to Parliament की बाबा ह्या 300 कंपन्यांची एकंदरीत आताची अवस्था आहे तर काय. Now just look at the funny thing. According to the official Public Enterprises Survey 2013-14, now this is the latest one which we have figured. for between 213 to 234 of the 290 central public service sector enterprises over the years. Now this survey is for the years between 2004-5 to 2013-14, which is roughly a 10-year period. The number of profit-making enterprises rose from 143 in 2004-5 to 163 in 2014-15. आता the one thing which you have to remember is ये जो 10 साल के बारे में बात किया जा रहा है 2004-5 to 2013-14 are years in which every effort has been made to whittle down something called as public investment in public sector enterprises. आणि असं असून देखील म्हणजे public investment ज्याला आपण म्हणतो public money invested in these companies एक systematic कोशिश किया गया है कि इस पैसे को कम किया जाए और इन companies को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा market exposure दिया जाए so that they can go about raising their monies from the market. Okay, and even then what you have is 143 firms making profits in 2003-4 and 163 firms making profits in 2013-14. So despite the fact that you are making the best of efforts to sort of carve out spaces for the private sector, you are in a situation where the companies are yet making profit. A. B. The aggregate profits of the profit-making enterprises rose from 74,432 crores to 1,49,164 crores, मतलब almost doubled. Okay, so जो एक जनरल पिक्चर पेंट किया जाता है कि PSUs एक ऐसी फर्म है कि जो लॉस मेकिंग है, जो प्रॉफिट नहीं बना सकती है, is a byword for inefficiency and corruption. Well, the picture suggests something else when the government actually goes about totaling up numbers. So what it suggests is कि 2003-4 में 2004-5 में आपकी ये जो PSUs है जिनका नेट प्रॉफिट एग्रीगेट प्रॉफिट जो है वो 74,000 करोड़ के आसपास है और 2013-14 में the same profit stands at 1,49,000 which is almost doubling of the profit. Okay, A. B. The losses of the loss-making CPSEs stood at 20,055 crores in 2013-14, well below the aggregate profits, and the CPSEs as a group paid dividends of rupees 65,115 crores and dividend taxes of rupees 8,700 crores. So on the face of it, this does not suggest companies which are loss-making. This does not suggest companies which are not able to make money. Okay. A second interesting statistic for a survey by the same department, the Department of Public Enterprises, for a period between 2006-7 to 2010-11 shows employment going down from 16.14 lakhs to 14.44 lakhs. So 2006-7 मध्ये we had employment of 16.14 lakhs और 2010-11 में, which is a period of 5 years, that employment has gone down by 14.44 lakhs. So you have almost 2 lakh jobs which have been lost, and they haven't bothered to go about filling in these positions. So these are like net jobs which are lost, and these jobs are never going to be recovered. Hey, technical redundancy में दी जा रहा है to prove this कि वहाँ पर technological upgradation की वजह से ये jobs losses हुए हैं और इन 2 लाख jobs की हमको एक तरह से जरूरत है. Okay, so net picture is of firms making profits. Net picture is of firms paying more dividend to the government. Net picture is of employment going down, which all is in consonance with the general business environment that you get at this time. Okay. So, कुठल्याही लेवलला when you look at this, and these figures come from the Department of Public Enterprises. So, yeah, figures don't come from any business daily. Yeah, figures don't come from anybody's imagination. These are figures which the government acknowledges when it sends these reports to Parliament. However, this is what has happened about these firms. आणि असं असून देखील बँड जो वाजवला जातो तो ह्या गोष्टीचा आहे की ह्या firms don't look up to the public sector. That is the basic idea is कि don't look up to anything that is part of the public sector. Efficiency, quality, better price. Well, for all of this, look at what about the private sector firms. So, public sector firms इसमें से कुछ नहीं कर सकती आपके लिए. इनकी तरफ देखो मत. हाँ? And no one knows as to why exactly is this being done. आता one can understand कि तुम्ही ज्या प्रकारच्या देशामध्ये राहता, ज्याच्यामध्ये तुमच्यापर्यंत जगात काय घडत आहे याची माहिती ज्या माध्यमांमधून पोहोचते. ती माध्यमं मुळातच प्रायव्हेट सेक्टर फर्म्सच्या ॲडव्हर्टायझिंग रेव्हेन्यूज वरती चालत असल्या कारणाने they have no reason to convey a picture to you that the public sector firms in India are possibly as profitable, more responsible, and possibly much more accountable as compared to what about the private sector firms. So it's obvious. Why is it that the debate is skewed? Why is it that nobody tells us this, that, well, public sector firms do make money? So the reason for it is, since you live in a country wherein you get your information through sources which are dependent on private sector firm advertising revenues, तुम्हाला कोणी सांगणार नाही. On the contrary, they will keep on painting a picture that the public sector is a byword for inefficiency, poor quality, non-delivery, bloated in terms of employment. It's a byword for everything that has gone wrong. Interestingly enough, leave the United States apart, Karan, it follows a completely different pattern of doing things. Most of the other countries in the world which started off as India was, and just a classical example is the Chinese and the Russians, did not start off with what is called as private sector firms and dominance. There is a problem as far as the Russian and the Chinese public sector enterprises are concerned, but nevertheless, even today, those are the firms which are driving their economies. So, कुठल्याही लेवलला त्यांच्या केसमध्ये असं घडलेलं नाही की बाबा their economies have been largely driven. अर्थात most of these firms, especially the Russian firms, are related to what is called as resource extraction. की oil, gas, metals, coal. For that matter of fact, a large number. तुम्ही जर ते महारत्न, नवरत्न companies बघितल्या, India's highest companies in terms of value, in terms of market capitalization is ONGC, which also does something very similar. Maybe not on the same scale as the Russian companies would do, but nevertheless does the same job. It's in what is called the same sector. So, ह्या companies देखील Coal India Limited आहे, ONGC आहे, ह्या companies देखील largely तेच काम करतात. Resource extraction, pricing and dissemination. ह्या पण companies काही वेगळं काम करत नाही. Okay? आणि तरी देखील we have this big debate in India की ह्या companies चुकीच्या आहे, चुकीच्या models मध्ये आहे. And यांना कसं बंद करणं गरजेचं आहे. And one doesn't know as I said, what exactly is it that one needs to be doing about all of this. In terms of, now another interesting thing is something called as value of the output of the Indian PSUs as percentage of GDP. Almost 25 years ago when liberalization began, it was 40%. As of now, it is barely 1/5. So आपका total GDP का size जो है, उसका 1/5 value is the value of the output of your PSU firms. It has dramatically and drastically gone down. And the reason why it has gone down in the last 25 years is because the state has, after having scaled the lofty heights of the economy, also has gone into a rollover. It has gone about creating spaces for what is called the private sector to flourish. Okay? And as I said, my problem is not about the private sector flourishing. My essential problem is it's the wrong type of things which are happening. It's the wrong type of firms which are flourishing. Had Reliance been a firm half as much as what the Tatas was, being a public listed company, one wouldn't have had a problem with it. But Reliance एक बहुत ही monopolistic किस्म का firm है कि जो एक sort of एक family concern है. और इसकी वजह से one feels that there's something completely wrong with this model of doing things. Okay. 1991-92, when how does the government do this? The government does this by something called as disinvestment. It has a department for disinvestment. It once upon a time had a ministry for disinvestment, and now it has gone back to the department of disinvestment, being a part of the heavy industries जो department है, तो परत त्याचाच हिस्सा. The budget last, the finance minister declares that this is the amount of money that I am expecting out of disinvesting this year. For budget 2015-16, the amount was 69,000 crores. म्हणजे त्याच्यात ते पुढे आहे काय पैसे काय रुपये आहे, पण roughly it is 69,000 crores. We are very close to the budget going to parliament. आणि आतापर्यंत what my best information is, they haven't even managed to get something like 25,000 crores. त्यामुळे आता तो ह्या वर्षी जाऊन काय तोंड दाखवणार आहे is what I am really interested in. With direct tax collections down, with disinvestment proceedings down, how is he exactly going to balance that off? I really don't. And plus with वो औरों और 7th Pay Commission का जो recommendations है, pending on his head, well, let them enjoy it. Let them enjoy it. Everyone should be on the burner at some point of time. In 1991-1992, when it first started, the government of India selected 31 PSUs for disinvestment. And the total amount of money which the government was supposed to realize was 3,038 crores. Okay, 1991-92, first year of the economic reforms, की ज्यादा पहिला level of disinvestment झालं. आता 69,000 crores and 3,000 crores. I hope you do realize the difference between the two. From 3,000 crores which was realized in 1991-92 to 69,000 crores being projected this year, you have walked quite a distance in between. A. Between 1991 to 2001, that is that one first decade of liberalization, the disinvestment target was 54,000 crores. But what the government actually got was 20,000 crores. में 10 वर्षाचा टार्गेट 54,000 कोटीचं होतं. पण 10 वर्षांमध्ये एक्झॅक्टली मिळालं किती तर 20,000 कोटी. Are you getting it? Target for 2014-15, that's the first full year of the new NDA in power. The target was 58,425 crores, and what was actually achieved was 24,338 crores. Okay, Darvarshi starting off from 1991 till the last year and including this year, but those figures are yet to go to parliament, so one cannot speculate about them as of now. Darvarshi the government comes up with very ambitious figures, and in Darvarshi the government's primary problem is कि those figures fall एकदम short. मैं गेल्या वर्षी तुम्ही 54,000 कोटी सांगितलं, तुम्हाला ऍक्च्युअली मिळालेले पैसे जे होते 58,000 कोटी, तुम्हाला ऍक्च्युअली मिळालेले पैसे 24,000 कोटी. So your shortfall was 34,000 crores. Okay. आता हे अजून accentuate and problematic का होतं? कारण year upon year the government's idea of overcoming the deficit is going in for things like disinvestment, and year upon year the government has no serious plan for raising taxation. खास करके जे यहाँ सगळ्या बैलछाप कंपन्या आहेत which make those huge heavy profits, the government has no idea about pushing in taxes for them. Year upon year, the alternative idea is you go in for what is called as increased figures for disinvestment. You keep staring at a deficit which keeps on becoming big. Primary problem ये है कि आपने कहाँ की disinvest करना है. Disinvest करना है मतलब क्या करना है? 51% से ज़्यादा स्टेक स्टेट के पास रख के बाकी सारा depending from the 51 to 100 anything has to be offloaded on the market. Okay. शेवटचा जो फेज असतो ना बजेटच्या आधीचा ज्याला ऍक्च्युअल नंबर्स स्टार्ट करायला लागतात. जर वर्षभरात काही झालं नाही ना, आमचा सगळ्यात भारी ठरलेला उद्योग आहे LIC ला फोन करणे आणि त्यांना सांगणे की हे आता उचला. I don't know, possibly we'll be doing this sometime in 2016. One needs to really talk of it in a big way. LIC this year becomes a 60-year-old company. In September 1956, the government of India एकदम by एक काय आपण म्हणतो एकदम secretive तरीके से came up with the insurance nationalization bill and went about nationalizing 240 private companies. And there was a history to it कि यहाँ ज्या दिव्य कंपन्या आहेत या सगळ्या 240 कंपन्या एक्झॅक्टली करत काय. And why was the government forced to go in for nationalizing of all these companies? 240 कंपन्या नॅशनलाइज केलेल्या आहेत एका रात्री. अनेक कंपन्या मर्ज केलेल्या आहेत आणि अनेक कंपन्या ऑलमोस्ट टेक ओव्हर केलेल्या. आज LIC is a $230 billion का कंसर्न. As of now, when I'm talking to you, you are talking of a lot of money. 230 billion is really huge. It's almost the sort of revenues that the first 3 American firms made in 2015. Okay, त्याच्यामुळे डिसइन्व्हेस्टमेंट शॉर्टफॉल आला ना, सांगितलं 54,000 कोटी ऍक्च्युअली आले 24,000 कोटी की मग काय करायचं, LIC ला फोन करायचं सांगायचं उरलेले शेअर खरेदी करा. And this is the game that we have been playing in this country. You issue it out of the right hand and the left hand goes and buys it. LIC एक public sector firm है. You are offloading shares in public sector firms and you are asking another public sector firm to mop it up in a situation wherein those shares are not being mopped up on the market. ह्याला मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स म्हणतात इन अ ग्रँड कंट्री कॉल्ड एज हाँ सगळं में इतना इल्यूजन है कि एक लेवल के बाद सीरियसली उसका नाम इल्यूजन नहीं डिल्यूजन है. Davos which happened last week खत्म हो गया. The India section was very interesting at Davos this year. There was a lot of talk about this. What exactly is the nature of the Modi government? कि Modi government exactly क्या किस्म का government है? ये अलग-अलग panels में हुआ, ये अलग-अलग तरीके से इसका discussion हुआ. And I'm just floating the idea. I don't know at what point of time we might go about talking about this idea in great detail. Is the Modi government a government of reform or is the Modi government a government of liberalization? Is Modi a reformer or is Modi a liberalizer? The larger point being made by most India watchers and Davos was Modi possibly is a great reformer. The problem is you are looking at a government आणि आता मी त्याच्यावरती पण भांडण झाली की त्याला रिफॉर्म म्हणताना त्या री आणि फॉर्म मध्ये हायफन द्यायचा का नाही द्यायचा कि are we talking of re hyphen form or are we talking of re without a hyphen form? And for me those debates were extremely excruciating for a simple reason because 78 में Chinese reform शुरू हो गया 2016 में हम हैं we are looking at China as of now. You cannot permanently go on reforming without liberalizing. This idea that you can keep on endlessly reforming without no idea of liberalizing is not what can work. China is a classical example. A government bent on reform without no idea of liberalization is a government which is inviting trouble for itself. तुम्ही असा खेळ खेळू शकत नाही की I will better reform without a hyphen or with an hyphen as compared to what Manmohan Singh did, and I'll keep on doing this. And that is what he is doing. मग ते सगळं ते काही ease of business आहे, self certification आहे, ते ease of getting money and disposing of money, bankruptcy code, starting a business, shutting a business. This is reform. This is not liberalization. And you cannot endlessly reform until and unless you don't have a brilliant idea of what entails the next stage in terms of liberalizing it. अगर आपका liberalizing का plan नहीं है, आप endlessly reform नहीं कर सकते. एक स्टेज के बाद ये प्रोसेस पूरा प्रॉब्लम में चला जाता है. Is what the Chinese have very eloquently proved. क्या आता सगळं झालं. We had our currency included in that SDR का basket सब हो गया. Now we are looking at each other कि आता काय करायला पाहिजे about our economy. नाही ह्याच्या पलीकडे करता येत नाही ना म्हणजे I can't order the Chinese Communist Party cadres आता जा let's get an market economy created. You can order the cadres in the opposite direction. You can't order the cadres to something which they are not accustomed to. कि आता जा आता मुक्तपणे शेअर्स खरेदी करा, शेअर्स मध्ये स्पेक्युलेट करा, शेअर्स विका. सगळं बरोबर मुक्तपणे हा शब्द लक्षात येत नाही कारण तो आपल्या करण्याचा कधीच भाग नव्हता. You can't order a liberal economy. It has to evolve. And if the state has no idea as to how is it supposed to evolve, कारण what is happening with the Modi government is it keeps on reforming, but it doesn't let the state withdraw itself. And for that it is not different from all the governments of the last almost 20 years. कि तुम्ही seriously why can't you go to the market and tell them कि बघ हे 58,000 कोटी आहेत ना हे 58,000 कोटी तुम्हीच मला द्या. तुमच्याशी काय अवस्था येते की बाबा 6 महिन्याच्या नंतर you have to give LIC a call and say की आता ठीक आहे चला आता पुढचे 6 महिने आहे ना तुम्ही 3-3,000 कोटी रुपयांनी दर महिन्याला गोष्टी खरेदी करत राहणार. Okay. And they come up with reasons. One of the most important reasons is something that is called as an unreformed labor market as far as the PSUs are concerned, with something known as unionized labor. 14.47 lakh total employment, which is a fraction of full-time employment in this country. But what is very unique about that employment is it's a completely unionized employment. त्यांच्या वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारच्या युनियन्स आहेत, त्यांच्या वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारच्या असोसिएशन्स आहेत, त्या एकदम वेल फॉर्म्युलेटेड आहेत आणि ते कुठल्याही पॉइंटला एकही गोष्ट सुटू देत नाही. So this is a good enough idea कि I go to the market, I buy their shares. My whole problem as an investor who would invest in a public sector firm, whenever I want to make money, so जिनका ऐसा कंडीशन है ना कि भाई उम्र 60 का है, एक बैंक बैलेंस है आणि आता काहीच करायचं नाहीये, अशा प्रकारची लोक can look out for what is called as steady dividends being paid year upon year by putting your money into public sector stocks. But for no other investor are public sector stocks at any point of time a lucrative sort of an idea for a simple reason कारण तुम्ही company managerial position ला take over जरी केली ना तरी देखील there are certain things which cannot be done. मी लाखांमध्ये लोकांना असं सांगू शकत नाही की आता उद्यापासून तुमची गरज नाही तुम्ही येऊ नका. Coal India, which is one of the highest capitalized firm on the Bombay Stock Exchange, has a formal employment of approximately 3.5 lakh people and a contractual employment of 20,000 people. म्हणजे 20,000 लोक जी ती कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट होते त्यांना तुम्ही उद्या नाही या असं म्हणू शकता. ती जी 3.5 लाख आहेत ना ज्या वेगवेगळ्या युनियन्स मध्ये विभागलेली आहेत त्या लोकांना तुम्ही उद्या येऊ नका असं नाही म्हणू शकता. ते येत राहणार जोपर्यंत ते 60 वर्षाचे होत नाही किंवा एखाद्या खाण्याची भिंत त्यांच्यावर पडत नाही. म्हणजे आपण कीप ऑन कमिंग. For anyone buying into firms like these, the fundamental question remains unanswered. When is this firm going to be restructured and when is it going to make money? So you don't know what to do with this. And the government's happy idea is कि left hand से release करो, right hand से दबोचो. इससे ज़्यादा कुछ मत करो. हाँ, बरं याच्यातल्या अनेक firms are operating in sections की ज्याच्यामध्ये त्यांना मार्केट कॅपिटलायझेशन मध्ये जर तुम्ही घुसवलं त्यांना तुम्ही म्हटलं की तुम्ही मार्केट मधून पैसे रेज करा तर द सर्व्हिसेस विच दे आर गोइंग टू गिव्ह यू विल बी इन अ सिच्युएशन की ज्याच्यामध्ये सर्व्हिसेसच्या किमती वाढायला. इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बीइंग अ क्लासिकल एक्झाम्पल. प्रायव्हेट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंपन्या या त्यांच्या राज्यांच्या किंवा सेंट्रल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रेग्युलेटरी कमिशनच्या दिवसभर कानी कपाळी लागून एकच गोष्ट करत राहतात. पर युनिट जी किंमत आहे ना ती वाढवून देतात. गेल्या 6 महिन्यामध्ये 5.40 होती आता 6.40 करून द्या आणि 6.40 ला चालू करायचं म्हणजे संध्याकाळपर्यंत ती 5.60 होती. प्रॉब्लेम इज who is going to be in a position to afford electricity, insurance, healthcare, coal, roads at those costs. क्योंकि आपका प्रॉब्लम क्या है? आपका प्रॉब्लम एक तरफ ये है कि इन फर्म्स में आपका पैसा इन्वॉल्व है. ये फर्म्स जो गुड्स और सर्विसेज जनरेट कर रही है जिनका पैसा इन्वॉल्व है, दैट्स द पीपल ऑफ इंडिया, दे आल्सो एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आर कंज्यूमर्स ऑफ दोस गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. And I need not even elaborate on the point that the people of India have a pathetic buying capacity. The Chinese, the American thing is $54,000. The Chinese thing is $21,000. तुमची sad story is $7,000. But we are in a better condition because the Chinese problem is that the Chinese are never going to become rich. They are going to keep on becoming older as compared to the Americans. And we are going to retain a demographic dividend for the better part of the 21st century. त्याच्यामुळे आता जरी 7,000 असलं तुम्ही काळजी करू नका हे वाढत जाणार. The problem is की ज्या कंट्रीची बाइंग पर्चेसिंग कॅपॅसिटी ही मुळातच लो आहे त्या देशामध्ये तुम्ही अशा प्रकारच्या गोष्टी अफोर्ड करू शकता का की ज्याच्यामध्ये या फर्म्स मधले तुम्ही गोष्टी ऑफलोड करणार आणि त्या गोष्टी तुम्ही मार्केटला टाकणार. मार्केटला टाकल्याच्या नंतर ज्या गुड्स अँड सर्व्हिसेस या कंपन्या जनरेट करणार त्याच्या किमती इनव्हेरिएबली वाढतात. बरं त्या वाढलेल्या किमतींना जर का तुम्ही त्या गुड्स अँड सर्व्हिसेस कंझ्युम नाही केल्या तर त्या मार्केट कॅपिटलायझेशनचा फायदाच होत नाही कारण ती कंपनी त्याच्यानंतर देखील लॉसेस बनवत राहते. It will make profit if you buy that. If you don't buy that and you can't buy it because you don't have the capacity to buy it, so that firm is never going to make profits. बरं परत ती लॉस मध्ये राहिली की मग आम्ही अजून एक नवीन आयडिया आयडिया घेऊन येणार ती म्हणजे आपण आहे ना गेल्यास किती केलं 5% डिसइन्व्हेस्ट केलं ना आता 15% करू असं करत राहायचं आणि ती डिसइन्व्हेस्ट करून करत करत काय राहायचं की तिच्या ऍसेट्स विकून टाकायच्या एकदम किरकोळ किमतीला विकून टाकायच्या स्टेट किती भारी काम करते लेट मी गिव्ह यू एन एक्झाम्पल ऑफ दिस and I'm quoting figures exactly for those things for which I've been in a position to substantiate it and to get something by way of additional information की हो हे असंच घडलेलं आहे एकच मिनिट आणि this is a very boring topic पण तुम्ही सिव्हिल सर्व्हिसेस करायला लागले तुम्हाला बोरिंग टॉपिकशी सवय असायला and people doing civil services be better serious about public sector enterprises because at some point of time or the other you are the people from which executives for these firms are selected so ज्या अनेक प्रकारच्या कंपन्या अशा असतात की ज्या अत्यंत स्ट्रॅटेजिक पॉइंटला have to go about selecting their executives from what is called the civil sector pool so ये आखिरकार आपका मामला है ये मेरा नहीं है आ रहा है समझ में तो better be serious about it until 2006 BSNL that's Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited posted an annual revenue of 40,000 crore mark each figure and profits of 8,000 to 10,000 crore okay until 2006 it was in fact the number one telecom company in the company till 2007 when the UPA government arbitrarily cancelled a tender for procuring equipment to set up 45 million lines okay again in 2010 tenders to procure equipment for 93 million connections was cancelled such moves made it virtually impossible for BSNL to procure new equipment okay until 2003-2005 BSNL made profits and continued to do so till 2008-2009 since then it has been making losses the losses amounted to 7,265 crores in 2014-15 7,019 crores in 13-14 and 7,884 crores in 2012-13. Despite overall losses, its operating profit in 2014-15 was 682 crores. This is what the government does. Okay, and this happens for a simple reason because nobody in parliament who should be in a position हे जो डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पब्लिक एंटरप्राइजेस का रिपोर्ट है ना दिस गोज टू अ पार्लियामेंट्री कमिटी व्हिच डिस्कसेस दिस रिपोर्ट एंड इट मेक्स रिकमेंडेशंस टू पार्लियामेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ क्या किया जाए कैन यू इमेजिन अ सिचुएशन फॉर अ कंपनी लाइक दिस इट नीड्स टू कीप ऑन कंटिन्यूअसली बाइंग इक्विपमेंट टू कीप ऑन अपग्रेडिंग द सर्विसेस दैट इट इज रेंडरिंग पण तुम्ही जर की नाही आपल्याकडे आणि त्याचं काय दे हॅवंट मेन्शन्ड व्हॉट इज द रिझन बिकॉज ऑफ व्हिच दीज कॉन्ट्रॅक्ट्स वर कॅन्सल्ड आउट किंवा त्यांची जी मागणी होती आता त्यांची मागणी गव्हर्नमेंटला करायला म्हणजे डिपार्टमेंट गव्हर्नमेंटला जातं हे मागणी द्यायला की बाबा हे 93 मिलियन लाईन्स साठी वी नीड न्यू इक्विपमेंट वी नीड टू प्रोक्योर त्याची एक प्रोसेस आणि प्रोसिजर असते गव्हर्नमेंटची ठरलेली पोझिशन अशी असते पण आपल्याकडे ह्या वर्षी याच्यासाठी पैसेच नाहीयेत बरं दुसऱ्या कुठल्याही हेडमधून आपण पैसे काढून देणार नाही systematically starve it of something called as capital and create an impression it's not working मग privatize and that privatization मध्ये there is no match in terms of उसका exact asset value क्या है उसका capacity क्या है what is the price which the market is paying for it and what is the price at which it can be valued valuation is a permanent problem है permanent ज्या वेळेला तुम्ही मार्केट वरती काहीशे शेअर्स अपलोड करता असे की हे आता आपण मार्केट साठी ऑफर केलेले आहेत हाऊ डू यू कम टू दॅट प्राइस व्हॉट डिटरमाइन्स दॅट प्राइस इट इज सो इजी इन द केस ऑफ ऑल दीज कंपनीज कि नोबडी इज क्लियर कि प्राइसिंग डिटरमाइन कैसे होता है okay so you end up with a situation ज्याच्यामध्ये the state which is the primary investor in these firms starves the firms of operating capital and creates a crisis for it बरं याच्यावरती ज्यांनी प्रश्न विचारायला पाहिजे ते प्रश्न विचारत नाही राहिलेली लोक ह्या आनंदामध्ये राहतात मला काय करायचं त्याच्याशी माझ्याकडे मोबाईल फोन आहे आपल्याकडे मोबाईल फोन आहे त्याच्यामुळे आपण त्याचा विचार करण्याची काही गरज नाही. BSNL चं कनेक्शन नाही मिळालं तरी चालते. You normally quote a private service provider who will give you a good service but will also charge you exorbitantly. But that is good. That is good enough. But that is a market in full operation. Because this is bad. You systematically starve it. These types of firms का problem क्या है? एक point के बाद expansion के लिए उसको capital का जरूरत है. वो कैपिटल स्टेट से आना है क्योंकि स्टेट इसका प्राइमरी इन्वेस्टर है और स्टेट ये काम छोड़ के बाकी सारे काम करता है. अच्छा, जिन लोगों ने पार्लियामेंट में ये सवाल पूछना जरूरी है कि भाई आप इसको पैसा क्यों स्टार्व कर रहे हो, वो लोग ये सवाल पूछते हैं नहीं. Well, no longer is parliament the avenue where these types of things happen. The right place where these types of things are discussed and happens is the Supreme Court of India. Parliament is for all the other sort of things, na? For celebrating 26th of November as Constitution Day, which nobody knows why. So त्याच्यासाठी पार्लियामेंट है. पॉलिसी एग्जीक्यूशन एंड डिजाइन के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट कि जो आपको बोलेगा कि कौन सी चीज पे कितना टैक्स लगाओ, किस चीज को निकाल दो, किस चीज को रखो, वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट बोलेगा, पार्लियामेंट नहीं बोलेगा आपको ये सब. You enjoy. You are living in a good place now. Now just look at something more fun. The finance ministry wrote to the Indian Railways, and here I have stated that it would be cut off by 12,000 crores relative to its original budgetary allocation, bringing it down to 28,000 crores from 40,000 crores provided for in the budget in 2015-16. The ministry, that's the finance ministry, said that the ceiling of 28,000 crore for planned expenditure and revised estimate fixed after careful review of pace of expenditure and resource position of the government. आणि परमनंटली सगळ्यांना असं पाठवलं की आता आपल्याकडे पैसे नाहीये, सो दिस इज द रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट. आता त्याच्यानुसार जे ओरिजिनली बजेटेड होतं त्याच्यामध्ये कट केलेलं आहे, आता राहिलेल्या पैशांमध्ये तुम्ही निभावून घ्या. ओके. The specious argument of lack of funds appears to be the dominant explanation for the cut. The finance minister also said, the ministry said in its letter to the railway ministry that it would not be able to respond favorably to the railways request for additional funds to meet the cost of implementing the 7th pay commission. So एक नोकऱ्या करायच्या बनवायच्या राहील, दोन बनवल्याच्या नंतर त्यांना पैसे देण्याकडे आपल्याकडे पैसे नाही. In its view, that's the finance ministry's view, since the liability of general revenues towards the implementation of the recommendations of the 7th pay commission is much larger in comparison to the railways, it is not feasible to finance railways on this account. It argued that as a departmentally run commercial organization, railways is expected to meet its revenue expenditure from its revenue collection. एकंदरीत काय, मी अरुण जेटली माझ्याकडे पैसे मागायला येते ना, माझ्याकडे तुमच्याकडे पैसे नाही, तुम्ही आता मॅनेज करा. ओके. दिस इज अ सिस्टमॅटिक वे फॉर कॉलिंग फॉर फर्दर प्रायव्हेटायझेशन, की जे खुलेआम सरळ मार्गाने करता येत नाही ते आड मार्गाने करण्याचा हा आहे. And railways has been steadily witnessing this situation की ज्याच्यामध्ये the least paid, most vulnerable jobs, which are the class C and class D jobs, are increasingly witnessing a situation of contractualization. हे least paid jobs हैं, हे most vulnerable jobs हैं, कारण these jobs most of the time go to people like the SC STs. आणि या जॉबचं सगळ्यात मोठं लक्षण काय आहे की या जॉबचं आता घडीला असलेलं सगळ्यात भारी लक्षण आहे की वी इन्क्रीजिंगली कॉन्ट्रॅक्च्युअलाइज. की आपल्याकडे ह्याच्यासाठी पैसे नाही, नो परमनंट एम्प्लॉयमेंट. लोक रिटायर झाली ना, लोक मेली, रिटायर झाली, VRS घेऊन निघून गेली की नवीन पोझिशन्स ऍडव्हर्टाइज करायच्या नाही. ऑब्झर्व इट, शो इट ॲज अ गेन. पण काम तर करायला लागणार आहे, त्याच्यासाठी कॉन्ट्रॅक्टवरती लोक नेमायचे. कॉन्ट्रॅक्टवरती लोक नेमल्यानंतर फायदे असे असतात, लोकांना कंपल्सरी कामावरती यायला लागतं कारण पेमेंट इज इन कॉन्सोनन्स टू द वर्क डन. ओके. कुठल्याही क्षणाला तुम्ही त्यांना असं सांगू शकता की हा आता शेवटचा चेक आहे, उद्यापासून नाही आले तरी चालेल. कसल्याही प्रकारचा पेन्शन, प्रॉव्हिडंट फंड, लाईफ लॉंग हेल्थ इन्शुरन्स अशा कुठल्याही रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रेव्हेन्यू अकाउंटवरती आपल्याकडे राहत नाही. कॉन्ट्रॅक्च्युअलाइज, मोर वर्क, बेटर वर्क, less money, no responsibility, best thing that can be done. And upper house of the world will never be found in those types of employments. Those types of employments invariably will go to the Rohit Vemulas of the world. So the upper house of the world suffer no cut into anything. मग ते सगळ्या बिझनेस चॅनल्स वरती जाऊन अक्कल लावून तुम्हाला सांगू शकतील की कसा प्रॉब्लेम आहे. सर ते दलितच नाही हो, जाऊ द्या काय सगळं सोडून द्या. सगळ्यात भारी आयडिया ती. सो जिन लोगों को एक्चुअली जॉब का जरूरत है, जिन लोगों का जिंदगी में दिस जॉब इज गोइंग टू मेक अ बिग डिफरेंस, they find their condition the most vulnerable on account of the government's large beautiful policy privatize it. And as I said, these enterprises need not be privatized because these enterprises are capable of making profits. One can understand that. म्हणजे एअर इंडिया का चालवावं हा मुद्दा आहे. भारत सरकारने एअर इंडिया का चालवावं? One can understand that. Not everybody flies. But something like the railways, which has a more mass nature to it as compared to Air India, which has a more class-based nature to it, one doesn't understand why is the government playing around with something like the Indian Railways, except for the fact कि दूसरा कुठलाही मार्ग नाहीये for a straight transfer. The only way of transferring resources, assets, and capital from the public exchequer to what is called the private sector is to take recourse to this. याच्यापेक्षा भारी आयडिया जी आहे ना, ती something called as public-private partnership, which is a unique idea which works only in India, and works in a manner wherein the public sector suffers losses, wherein the public sector monetizes risk, and the private sector makes all the profit. PPP म्हणजे एक्झॅक्टली काय असतं? तुम्ही मला सगळं करून द्या, तुम्ही मला जमीन मिळवून द्या, तुम्ही मला झाडेकरांकडून एन्व्हायरमेंटल क्लिअरन्सेस घेऊन द्या, तुम्ही एखादी पब्लिक सेक्टर बँक बुडवा. There is this thing called as the non-performing assets, which have been responsible for the condition of the public sector banks in India. सगळं धरून those assets run into something like 7 lakh crores. 11% is the total amount which is pending as far as these banks are concerned. It's a huge amount of money. It can actually destroy these banks. And mostly पैसे कुणाचे involved आहे? So mostly पैसे involved आहे of all these big corporates. The bigger the corporate, the larger the possibility that he has money pending with the PSUs. 70,000 कोटी, 1 लाख कोटी. आणि ज्याला यू हॅव दोज टाइप्स ऑफ मनीज इन्व्हॉल्वड, बँकेला पर्याय नसतो ना, बँकेकडे एकच पर्याय असतो की पण रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग इट. अच्छा मग आता देता येत नाही का, मग 5 वर्षांनी द्या, 10 वर्षांवरती आपण रिस्ट्रक्चर करू. 13% व्याजाने देता येत नाही, 60% व्याजाने द्या. मात्र शेतकरी आहे मोठा प्रॉब्लेम. त्यामुळे त्या सगळ्या ज्या काही मराठीतले अत्यंत बिंडोक अशा प्रकारचे चॅनल्स असतात, याच्यावरती रात्री 9 वाजतापासून चर्चा करतात आणि त्या चर्चा इतक्या बिंडोक असतात की त्याला काहीच अर्थ नाही. हाऊ डू यू फंक्शनलाइज दिस and what do you do with the corporate sector of India which has been responsible for almost digging the graves as far as the public sector banks are concerned? त्याच्याबद्दल बोलायचं नाही. मात्र शेतकरी, सहकारी बँका हा प्रॉब्लेम आहे. जिम्मेदार कौन है? आप पकड़ क्या रहे हो? अच्छा जिसको पकड़ रहे हो, डू यू वांट टू रियली प्रोसिक्यूट हिम? तर उचलून घे ना, तर किती झालं ना आता. घेऊन जायचं, काही फरक नाही पडत महाराष्ट्राला. Does he have the balls, the guts to do that? He doesn't. Well, वायफळ गोष्टींमध्ये काहीच अर्थ नाही. That means no point as such. Farmers are responsible for a problem in banking. Corporates are not. So let's keep on restructuring, endless restructuring. आज एक प्लॅन, अजून 2 महिन्यांनी एक प्लॅन, अजून 3 महिन्यांनी एक प्लॅन. कारण ते सगळे प्लॅन्स मला बँकच्या अकाउंट शीट्स वरती दाखवतात की बघा I am doing something. That they have bad business ideas, that they have dirty business models which can never make money. Nobody is worried about anything of this. The more you make losses, the more the ideas keep on privatizing widely. Without any एका पद्धतीने याचा विचार करायचा नाही की आतापर्यंत झालेल्या प्रायव्हेटायझेशन मध्ये एक्झॅक्टली गेन किती झाला, I don't know. I seriously don't know. How do you look at this? What do you do with it? There's an idea called as a sick public sector enterprise. की त्या sick होता. त्याच्यातली आता एक जी sick झाली की जी finally सरकारने तिला औषध पाजून मारून टाकली. This is something that is called as HMT. कि HMT and its 3 divisions have now been permanently closed down with the government of India finally deciding that we are not going to put any money into this. And here there is no possibility that this can ever be revived. So this is something जो 2015 का classical last big event कि the government finally liquidated HMT for all times to come, declaring it's a company which is not capable of ever being revived. A sick public sector enterprise is a firm which keeps on accumulating in any given financial year losses which are equal to 50% of its average net worth during the last 4 years. So एक financial year में आपने 50% आपका जो net worth था गए 4 सालों में उसका 50% या उससे ज़्यादा का loss बनाया. You are what is referred to the sick ward as a company that now seriously needs to be treated. Okay. One of the ways of treating it is by infusing more capital into it. But that exactly is the last option on the table. म्हणजे बाकी सगळ्या गोष्टींचा विचार केला जातो. आणि एकदम last कधीतरी when the company is almost in a condition that it can never be revived again, then somebody starts talking about this. Well, can we think in terms of capital infusion? So by that time the damage has already been done. You know for sure कि तुम्ही आता काही पण करा, the patient is not going to be revived at all. तर मग जाता ते मरणाला बरं वाटावं अशा अर्थाने जास्त ना की नाही ठीक आहे की आता मला माहिती आहे की यू कांट बी रिवाइव्ड, तुम्ही परमनंटली मरणार आहे, तर ते जाता बरं बोलायचं. दॅट इज द वे बाय व्हिच इट हॅपन्स. देयर आर व्हेरी फ्यू कंपनीज व्हिच हॅव बीन रिवाइव्ड इन द लास्ट 25 years. मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम दे हॅव बीन व्हेरी हॅपीली प्रायव्हेटाइज्ड ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ समथिंग दैट सेज की या कधीही रिवाइव्ह होऊ शकत नाही. प्रायव्हेटाइज झाल्यानंतर द प्रायव्हेट फर्म्स एकदम जो नोचने का एक्टिविटी होता है ना वैसा वाला एक्टिविटी करता है. इट स्ट्रिप्स द फर्म ऑफ ऑल इट्स एसेट्स and goes about monetizing all its assets and then lets the firm buy. So तिची social commitment, तिची commitment to technological upgradation of the country ते सगळं काढत गेले. त्याचे आपल्याला काही येत नाही. आता HMT I don't know. Again I need to do a separate thing on it. HMT was systematically destroyed by the Tatas, very systematically. One of the first pioneering companies in terms of a certain sort of evolution of technologies of making watches. But Tata ne itna, that Tata firm called as Titan, very systematically destroyed HMT. But most of these firms, when they reach that level, the private firms, especially of the Tata variety, play a wonderful game, and that is exactly what it did in the case of Titan. It starts poaching on the executives of the government firm. की तुम्ही आता गव्हर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयमेंट मध्ये आहात, तुम्हाला किती पैसे मिळणार, तुम्ही काय करू शकता याच्यात. I give you a much better offer. I give you stock options. I give you a much better operating environment. So the game is you leave it and join me. आता तो join होत असताना तो कधीही he leaves a government job. He joins a private firm. अरे but he is carrying with him that एका लेवलच्या नंतर गव्हर्नमेंट तुम्हाला तेवढी ऑटोनॉमी नाही ना देत. आणि तो त्यांचा फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लेम आहे. त्यांच्यापैकी अनेक लोकांना लय बरं वाटेल की इफ यू कॅन हॅव वन मोर राउंड ऑफ 1991 वाला क्राइसिस ना कि जिसके बाद द गवर्नमेंट विल पॉसिबली हैव टू विथड्रॉ आउट ऑफ दिस. एयर इंडिया कैन बी अ सीरियसली वेरी प्रॉफिटेबल फर्म, वेरी वेरी प्रॉफिटेबल. इट्स एन अनबिलीवेबल कंपनी. बट जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ द फैक्ट they वो व्हाट इज दैट ऑथर जिसका किताब था व्हिच प्रफुल्ल पटेल गॉट बैंड वाज एन एयर इंडिया एग्जीक्यूटिव. आई एम नॉट गेटिंग हिज नेम. ऑफ द ग्राउंड का असं काहीतरी असं नाव आहे की जे प्रफुल्ल पटेल ॲक्च्युली गॉट इट बॅक. And that book has all manner of details in terms of Prafull Patel ni काय वाट लावली आहे इंडियाची in his position as civil aviation minister. It's almost a turnaround thing. It can give you all those details. How exactly can this company be turned into a very profitable company?
इंडियन इकॉनॉमिक ग्रोथचा जो ट्रेंड बघितला आपण ना तर अरविंद पगारे म्हणतात की 8.5च्या पुढे झाले ते आणि रघुराम राजन म्हणतात 7.5. तसं का म्हणजे दुबईमध्ये एवढा डिफरन्स कसा 1% विदाउट इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रॉब्लेम. वी आर म्हणजे लास्ट 10 years पासून आपल्याकडे इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रॉब्लेम इतके लॉसेस आहेत ना खूपच जास्त.
तू इकॉनॉमिक सर्वेची वाट बघ. द बेस्ट फिगर्स इज व्हॉट यू गेट इन द सर्वे. let the government come up with a survey, let Arvind Subramaniam speak, then you would know what the real growth rate is.
ते टाटाला रिलायन्सला कंपनीज घेतल्या होत्या प्रायव्हेटली, तर ते जर डिसइन्व्हेस्टमेंट खाली तर तिथं आपल्या एक प्रकारचं फेल्युअरच झालं ना. डायरेक्टली कंपनी म्हणून टाटाला गेल्या. लँड कॉस्ट तिथली डायरेक्टली सुद्धा मुंबई वगैरे म्हणजे लँड कॉस्ट तिथली हाय होती, म्हणजे व्हेरी मिनिमाइज कॉस्टमध्ये
वही तो होता है ना.
विदर्भ म्हणजे त्याच वेळेस म्हणजे
आपण प्रॉब्लेम काय आहे की ह्या सगळ्याला रोखू शकेल, प्रश्न विचारू शकेल, विरोध करू शकेल हा तुमच्या राजकारणाचा अजेंडाच नाही. आमच्या राजकारणाचा अजेंडा काय आहे? सिन्स दिस इज नॉट द पार्ट ऑफ एनी पॉलिटिक्स इन इंडिया, ये खाली किसका पॉलिटिकल कंसर्न है? ये लेफ्ट पार्टीज का है. पण लेफ्ट पार्टीज बिकॉज ऑफ द सॉर्ट ऑफ फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स दैट द लेफ्ट इन इंडिया फेसेस cannot push this beyond a certain level. ते ह्याच्यावरती एका लेवलच्या पलीकडे काय नाही करू शकत. आणि जे करू शकतात दोज आर द नंबर्स लाईक द BMS आर नॉट इंटरेस्टेड इन दिस. म्हणजे सगळ्यात मेजर प्रॉब्लेम काय आहे हे तुम्ही कसं रोखू शकता, ह्याला तुम्ही कसं डील करू शकता. तर यू नीड अ पॉलिटिक्स which is responsible, accountable and which would insist that this be done. But since you don't have a politics that revolves around it, this is exactly what you're going to get at the end of the day. And who do you hold responsible for it? सगळ्यात भारी गेम काय आहे? Something that belongs to everybody is actually effectively something that belongs to nobody.